Winter of 1633. The night Giovanni almost lost his soul began with the smell of burnt bread and his daughter's cry asking for food he didn't have to give. He was a baker, 32 years old, hands calloused from kneading flour since he was a boy. The bakery stood in a narrow alley in Florence, where sunlight rarely reached the damp stones. It was a place of perpetual shadows. In winter, it was a place of suffering. His wife, Chiara, had died in childbirth 6 months earlier. The baby didn't survive either. Only Sofia remained, his 7-year-old daughter, with eyes too large for such a thin face. Eyes that seemed to constantly ask why the world was so cruel. Giovanni worked 18 hours a day, kneaded, baked, sold. But no matter how hard he worked, it was never enough. Debts grew like weeds. The landlord had raised the rent twice. Suppliers demanded immediate payment. And the city, indifferent, continued its march while he sank. That specific night, everything collapsed. The last sack of flour ran out at 3 p.m. There was no money to buy more. He had 17 coins. The rent cost 20 and was due yesterday. There was no credit. There was no one to turn to. Giovanni climbed the stairs and found Sofia huddled in the corner, shivering. The fire in the hearth had gone out. The last firewood was gone. "Papa," she said in a voice so small it almost disappeared into the frozen silence. "I'm hungry, and it's so cold." Giovanni knelt beside her. He wanted to say everything would be fine, but that would be a lie. And he had promised Chiara he would always tell the truth. "I know, sweetheart," he said, "and I'm sorry." Sofia placed her small hand on his. "It's not your fault, Papa. Mama told me, before she left, that you're the most honest man she ever knew, that I should always remember that." Those words broke something inside him. He went down to the empty bakery, fell to his knees there, on the cold stone floor, and cried. A deep, visceral cry of a completely broken man. "God," he said to the emptiness, "I worked. I was honest in every transaction. I never stole. I never cheated anyone. Why have you abandoned me? What more do I need to do?" Silence was the only answer, a dense silence that pressed against his ears. That's when he heard the knock on the door. It was almost 10 at night. Giovanni opened it. On the other side stood Pietro. Pietro was a grain merchant, rich, influential, always well-dressed. But there was something in his eyes, something calculating and cold. "Giovanni," Pietro said, smiling, "I heard about your difficulties. I came to help." He entered without waiting for an invitation. He pulled a leather pouch from his coat and placed it on the table. The sound of coins was heavy, tempting. It seemed to contain more money than Giovanni saw in a month. "What do you need me to do?" Giovanni asked. There was always a price. Pietro smiled more broadly. "I have access to flour of variable quality. It's not bad, just not as refined. Mixed with good flour, no one notices the difference, and the cost is much lower." Giovanni felt something cold in his stomach. "You're talking about adulteration." "I'm talking about survival," Pietro corrected, his voice now with an edge of steel. "About a man feeding his daughter. About not being thrown into the street in winter. Is it so terrible? No one dies. They just eat bread 90% as good as normal, and you survive." He pushed the pouch closer. "Here's enough to pay all your debts, rent, suppliers, and there's plenty left for firewood, food. All you need to do is accept my supply once a week. Mix, bake, sell, simple." Giovanni looked at the pouch, then at the ceiling, knowing that above Sofia was cold and hungry. He looked at his rough hands from honest work. The darkness of the night seemed to swallow everything, and Giovanni understood he was facing a choice that would define his very soul. It would be so easy. Reach out, solve all the problems. No one would know. He reached out his hand. His fingers were inches from the pouch when a memory struck him. Chiara. In her last moments of life, lying in that blood-stained bed, gripping his hand with desperate strength. "Promise," she had said. "Promise you'll raise Sophia to be good. Teach her that integrity is worth more than anything. That being honest, even when it costs, is what defines a person. Promise." And he had promised. Giovanni pulled his hand back as if the pouch were on fire. "No," he said. His own voice surprised him, firm, clear. "I won't do it." Pietro's smile disappeared. "You're being foolish. Think about your daughter." "I am thinking about her," Giovanni said, feeling something rebuild inside him. "If I accept this, what am I teaching? That when things get difficult, we abandon our principles. That integrity is a luxury. I love my daughter more than my life. But if I sell my soul to feed her, what kind of father will I be? She'll have bread today, but she'll learn that betraying others is acceptable. And I won't teach her that." Pietro stood up, grabbing the pouch. His face was red with anger. "You'll regret this," he said. "When you're on the street, you'll remember this moment and regret your foolish pride." "It's not pride," Giovanni said, opening the door. "It's all I have left. You can offer me money, but you're asking me to give up the only thing I have of real value. And that I won't sell." Pietro left without another word. Giovanni closed the door, leaned against it. For a moment, panic almost swallowed him. What had he done? He had just rejected the solution. Tomorrow they would be evicted. Sophia would continue to be hungry. But he took a deep breath. If he had accepted, he would have solved today's problems, but created a void inside himself that would never be filled. He would have looked at Sophia knowing he had betrayed everything he promised Chiara. He climbed slowly. Sophia was awake. "Papa," she said, "did someone bring food?" "No, sweetheart, but I made a difficult choice, and I chose what I thought was right." "Mama would be proud," Sophia said with simple certainty. They lay down together. The cold still penetrated. Hunger still hurt. But something fundamental had changed. Giovanni had chosen who he was. They slept in each other's arms. Dawn brought urgent knocking. Giovanni woke disoriented. He opened the door. On the other side was Father Antonio. Behind him, 3 men carried heavy sacks. "Giovanni," the priest said, "I desperately need your help. The convent received a donation of flour to make bread for the poor, but the oven broke. I heard you're an honest baker. Can I use your oven? I'll pay for the work and you keep some of the bread." Giovanni looked at the sacks, looked at the brightening sky, and understood. "Yes," he said, his voice choked. "You can use it." All morning, he worked like never before, kneaded pure flour of exceptional quality, baked bread after bread. The bakery came back to life. The smell filled the alley. And Sophia ate. For the first time in weeks, she ate until satisfied. But the true miracle came in the afternoon. One of the men, a merchant named Tomas, had observed Giovanni work, the precision, the care. He approached. "Giovanni, I need a reliable bread supplier for my fleet of ships, someone who doesn't adulterate. I've heard about you. They say you're the only baker in Florence who never cheated a customer. Is it true?" Giovanni thought of Pietro, of the pouch, of the choice. "It's true," he said. Tomas nodded. "Then we have a deal. You'll supply bread for 20 ships. I'll pay in advance. If the quality holds, it's a permanent contract. Interested?" "Very," Giovanni replied. Tomas pulled out a contract. The payment was 3 times what Giovanni normally earned. "One thing," Tomas said before leaving. "Yesterday, Pietro offered me bread for a much lower price. I was suspicious. I investigated. I discovered he adulterates flour, cheats on measurements. I rejected him. That's when Father Antonio told me about you. about a baker who rejected Pietro's proposal because he'd rather starve than cheat customers. I came to see for myself, and I'm glad I came. He shook Giovanni's hand and left. In one morning, everything had changed. The debts could be paid. Sophia would be fed. The future opened up, but it wasn't luck. It was consequence. The choice he made in the darkness, when it seemed impossible, opened doors he didn't even know existed. Weeks later, Pietro returned. This time he brought no proposals. He brought ruin. His schemes had been exposed. Clients were suing. Authorities were investigating. He had nothing. "Giovanni," he said, his voice trembling, "I need help. Anything. I have nothing." Giovanni could have taken revenge. He looked at Sophia in the window, remembered Chiara. Integrity isn't just refusing evil. It's choosing good even when it costs. "You can work here," Giovanni said. "Why, as an apprentice? The pay is small, but honest, and you'll learn there's a better way to live." Pietro accepted with tears. In the following months, working alongside Giovanni, seeing how he treated each customer with respect, each challenge with integrity, Pietro changed. Bitterness was replaced by gratitude, greed by contentment. 2 years later, when Giovanni opened a second bakery, it was Pietro he chose to manage it. Giovanni's story spread through Florence. The baker who rejected easy wealth in his darkest moment and found true prosperity. The man who chose hunger with honor instead of plenty with shame. And when Sophia grew up, she told her children about that winter night when her father faced the darkness and chose the light. "My father taught me," she would say, "that integrity isn't tested when everything is fine. It's tested in absolute darkness. Anyone can be honest when it's convenient, but the truly integral are those who choose what's right when it costs everything." Giovanni lived surrounded by family and a community that respected him. His network of bakeries prospered. But his true legacy was the lesson engraved in the soul of everyone who knew his story. In the darkest hours, when despair whispers that the only way out is to compromise your values, that's exactly when your choice matters most. It's in absolute cold that the light of a candle makes a difference. It's in extreme hunger that refusing poisoned bread becomes an act of supreme courage. Giovanni could have taken the money, but he would have lived knowing that when he was truly tested, he failed. That knowledge would have destroyed something essential inside him. Instead, he chose to suffer a little longer, chose to trust there was another way, and the miracle came, not because he deserved it, but because when we refuse to compromise who we are, we open space for something greater to operate. This isn't just a story from the past, it's your story. Now, today, you face your own choices. It may not be about adulterated flour, but it's about integrity, about doing what's right when no one is watching, about keeping your word when breaking it would be easier. Choose as Giovanni chose, not because I guarantee a miracle will come tomorrow, but because the person you become through that choice is worth more than any gain obtained by betraying yourself. If this story touched something deep in you, share it with someone who needs to hear that integrity still matters. Subscribe to this channel to continue this journey of stories that don't just entertain, but transform. Because you're not here by accident. You're here because your soul recognizes truth when it finds it. Until the next journey. And remember, darkness is temporary, but the light you carry within yourself is eternal.